Pete Hegseth is a paradox. The more he tries to be manly, the more he looks like a clown. With the Iran war, even his supporters are getting anxious. Why is it so hard for Pete to butch it up? I can explain. I'm Amanda Marcotte. Welcome to Standing Room Only. Pete Hegseth is obsessed with how he looks in photographs. I mean, it's obvious. The defense secretary preens for the cameras like he's a cut-rate Tyra Banks. But we got hilarious proof of his vanity very recently. The Washington Post reported that the Pentagon banned news photographers after a March 2nd briefing on the Iran war. The offense? His staff thought that these pictures were unflattering. This looks like every other picture of you, dude. The situation is a perfect example of how Pete is his own worst enemy. He wants to be butch so badly, but he's so thirsty that it backfires. I mean, I'm embarrassed for him.
Good morning and welcome to the War Department. Because the era of the Department of Defense is over.
And we had our big Pete and Bobby challenge today. 50 pull-ups, 100 push-ups. You try to get under 5 minutes. How'd you do?
We got close.
We unleash overwhelming and punishing violence on the enemy. We also don't fight with stupid rules of engagement.
Maximum lethality, not tepid legality. Violent effect, not politically correct.
You might say we're ending the war on warriors. I heard someone wrote a book about that.
Is there anything worse when you're like laughing at your own joke and everyone else is like, you can just imagine him practicing those lines at his Pentagon makeup mirror. I must state here that he denies having a makeup studio, which, okay. Liberals have always laughed at Hegseth the tryhard, but with the Iran war, even some MAGA bros are getting antsy with their boy. Before the war, MAGA bros loved Pete Hegseth.
Pete has a lot of friends. People like Pete. He's a good man.
Let's face it, Pete is awesome.
When I met Pete Hegseth, I was not meeting with him. Together with him, we were both meeting with someone else. We were both worshiping God, and neither of us were worshiping political power.
Russia already said, have Venezuela, whatever. China's like scared. To actually have a real war fighter that's not a political pussy.
I want to see his war chest, and his war abs, and his war butt.
I bet you do. A feminist scholar could write a whole book about how this is just masculinity purely as performance. Look, Donald Trump did not hire Pete because of his military expertise. Pete was a Fox News weekend host before this. His time in the Army was not great. He himself wrote that the Army spit him out in 2021. He did serve in Iraq, but he never rose above the rank of major. Trump hired him to be on TV. Being on TV is the only thing that Pete is good at.
Don't freeze up.
And I've always known you guys are BFFs.
You guys want to hold hands?
Competition. I'll hold Will's hand if he'll hold mine.
You call me crazy.
This is the right way to throw an axe.
No, it is all right up.
And this was a Fox News exclusive. Fox and Friends co-host Pete Hegseth aiming for accuracy and missing.
Who's going to win this battle with the lumberjacks? That's coming up next.
What you didn't see on air is what the axe hit, or should we say who.
Why would you give him an axe? From a TV critic standpoint, I think he's better in the role of a morning show goober. He's less convincing in the role of a wannabe John McClane. But MAGA has low standards, okay? And it would have worked if Pete had stayed in the land of make-believe. But he had to ruin it by leading the US into a real war with Iran. Real wars are hard. They require planning and foresight and smart people, including women and minorities. And even then, you still might lose. Wars are serious business. They're not for clowns and fake tough guys. To their slender credit, some MAGA dudes know that real war is a bad idea.
Many America First voters, myself included,
are wondering how exactly the invasion of Iran will advance the interests of the United States.
This is why a lot of people feel betrayed, right? He ran on no more wars.
This war is not being waged on behalf of American national security objectives to make the United States safer or richer. This war is not actually even about weapons of mass destruction, nukes.
Pete Hegseth took some incoming for going on 60 Minutes and saying, we're not going to telegraph exactly what we're doing. I don't blame him for that. What I worry about are the things that we don't see coming, the things that are not anticipatable.
Secretary of War Pete Hegseth had another presser this morning with the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, Dan Kane, and came out swinging. He, too, has a job of trying to spin us. I respect Pete and obviously advocated for him, but you've got to be somewhat skeptical as a reporter and a news consumer about the just sweepingly positive reports he gives.
Yeah, the worst people you know have a good point. Unfortunately for them, Pete is not listening. And I'm afraid that the tough guy posing is only getting sillier. Pete sounds like a third grader reciting lines from his favorite comic book movie.
No one's putting us in danger. We're putting the other guys in danger. This is not a so-called regime change war. But the regime sure did change. Iran's leadership is in no better shape. Desperate and hiding, they've gone underground, cowering. That's what rats do.
His lines aren't just clunky. They're plain false. Iran is putting Americans in danger. At least 13 American soldiers have died in the Iran war. The regime has not changed either. Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, was killed in action, but he was just replaced by his son. The son seems to be savvier than Pete. He closed a major shipping thoroughfare called the Strait of Hormuz, which is driving oil prices up.
The only thing prohibiting transit in the Straits right now is Iran shooting at shipping. It is open for transit should Iran not do that.
CNN reported that tough guy Pete ignored warnings that this would happen. Pete denies that report. Sure, Pete, sure. Hegseth may be a joke, but he's still dangerous. Government investigators say that the U.S. is likely responsible for the bombing of a girls' school in Iran, which killed 175 people, most of them children. Pete responded by saying bombs are being launched from the schools. But sources told the Washington Post that the school was on a target list by mistake. Pete has since opened up an investigation, but has not publicly taken responsibility. Harming defenseless people from afar doesn't make you tough. It's weak. Pete's bragging may have been exciting when he was strutting on the stage for the MAGA bros, but in practice, it's not just immoral, but pathetic. It's having little girls die on your watch and not even having the nuts to admit you screwed up. I'd like to welcome Heather Digby Parton to the program. Heather is the founder of the Hullabaloo blog, and of course, she's a contributing writer to Salon. Welcome to Standing Room Only, Heather. I look forward to talking about Pete Hegseth with you.
Oh my gosh. Thanks so much for having me. I love this show, so I'm thrilled to be here.
So you actually wrote very recently a really great piece about the Iran war and Pete Hegseth, and specifically how they didn't realize that Iran was going to shut down the Strait of Hormuz, even though they were warned that this would happen. So I want to hear from you. How did you feel when it became clear that they had ignored the warnings of this very obvious thing that was going to happen?
Well, I wish I could say that I was really shocked by that, because we should be shocked that the United States of America didn't recognize the most obvious reaction from the country of Iran if it was mercilessly attacked as it has been. Everybody's known this. I mean, I know it, and anybody that's followed this for even the smallest amount of time, much less for it's been almost 50 years. There's a reason. I mean, this has been the great, dream of glory on the right wing. You remember after Iraq, when they were first going in, the real hardcore hawks were saying, Baghdad's one thing, real men go to Tehran. This was always something that they were dying to do. And there's a reason why nobody ever did it before. And this is it. Because the whole, the world's oil supply is dependent on, something like 30% of the world's oil goes through the Strait of Hormuz. And everybody knows it. And, some of the people, like the Obama administration, for instance, thought, gee, maybe we should do some negotiation with Iran to kind of, mitigate their nuclear threat. And then also at the same time, do a lot of work on renewable energy so that we don't have to think about that so much. Maybe the world can get over this particular thing. But nobody seriously thought that it was a great idea to go in and start bombing relentlessly and randomly in Iran because of the ramifications, which of course are, they're massive. I mean, and this is not getting any better. So yeah, I should have been shocked, but this is the Trump administration. So I have to admit, virtually nothing shocks me anymore. I mean, how can it? It just keeps going on. So yeah.
The first clip I want to show you is how Pete Hegseth has responded to people asking him about forgetting the Strait of Hormuz.
Iran has no air defenses. Iran has no air force. Iran has no navy. Their missiles, their missile launchers and drones being destroyed or shot out of the sky. And as the world is seeing, they are exercising sheer desperation in the Straits of Hormuz. Something we're dealing with. We have been dealing with it and don't need to worry about it.
Yeah,
don't need to worry about it. No biggie. Yeah. Why are we talking about this?
Why worry your pretty little head about it? I've got it. Don't worry.
Yeah. Leave it to the big boys here.
But no, I mean, bigger picture, what does this say about Pete Hegseth's view of how the military should work, that he just says, don't worry about it, don't ask me questions like this?
Well, I mean, most of the people that I've read talking about Hegseth and about specifically trying to analyze what makes him tick and what makes his mind work. First of all, he's just completely unqualified and unfit to be a Secretary of Defense or Secretary of War. That the mindset that he has is not, it is not correct for this particular job, which takes, it's a big political job, strategy and all that. He has the mindset of a major who is, running a platoon on the ground. And it's not uncommon, I guess, for those. I mean, I haven't been in the military. My dad was in the military, but I haven't been. But, this is kind of how they think, this kind of tough guy, rah, G.I. Joe sort of thing that he does. We got to go out and, fight, boys. And, obviously he's been very influenced by, I guess, the movie Patton. It's the only thing I can think of, the way he sort of struts around on stage and talks. He doesn't have the mindset of somebody who is involved in something, in strategy or the political side of his job, which is very important, especially at a time of war. Their whole idea is that we can do anything with the U.S. military. He and Trump have this in common. They believe that it's invulnerable, and that the problem is, I wrote about this the other day on Salon, that, back in the day, went back to Dr. Strangelove, with Buck Turgidson, the Air Force colonel, saying, he was based on a similar guy by the name of Curtis LeMay, who was an Air Force general, who said, let's bomb them back into the Stone Age. It's the thing that the drunk guy at the end of the bar says, right? It's the idea that somehow or another we just have never been tough enough. Well, in Vietnam, we bombed the shit out of North Vietnam for 8 years. Laos and Cambodia too. It was relentless. Granted, they didn't drop a nuke. I guess that's really what, at the end of the day, that's what Trump and Hegseth figure they've got in their back pocket. But the truth is that, of course, we have used relentless, remember shock and awe in Iraq. It was absolutely horrific. And the fact of the matter is that stuff doesn't work. It's not the way modern warfare works. We're looking at an asymmetric situation now with Iran, where they've got these very inexpensive drones that are absolutely driving everybody crazy in all the Mideast countries that, have bases and what have you, and American assets. And also, it's one of the main threats in the Strait of Hormuz. And, the United States with its big military and its very fancy hardware and high technology, that alone does not do it. And even if you have every tactical advantage in the world, you have to have a strategy. And they don't have one. That's obvious that they went into this thing. Like you said, they probably couldn't have found the Strait of Hormuz on a map. And that's Hegseth and Trump both, and maybe some of the other people in the administration as well.
The second clip I want to show you is, Hegseth is very defensive now. He's on his back foot and he got really mad and he kind of threatened CNN for reporting the facts on the war. And I just want to play the clip of him taking the stance against them for you.
People look up at the TV and they see banners, they see headlines like Mideast War intensifies, splashing on the screen. What should the banner read instead? How about Iran increasingly desperate? Because they are. Or more fake news from CNN. Reports that the Trump administration underestimated the Iran war's impact on the Strait of Hormuz. Patently ridiculous, of course. For decades, Iran has threatened shipping in the Strait of Hormuz. This is always what they do, hold the strait hostage. CNN doesn't think we thought of that. It's a fundamentally unserious report. The sooner David Ellison takes over that network, the better.
I'm always struck by how he thinks he's like this big manly man, but he is so whiny. The thing about David Ellison at the end taking over CNN, for viewers who don't know, this is a Trump ally who's purchasing CNN just like he purchased CBS. And the threat is that he's going to turn it to this like Fox News style right-wing propaganda outlet. So there is teeth behind this threat. And now we have Donald Trump out there calling it treasonous to report accurately on the war. We have Brendan Carr of the FCC threatening to yank broadcast licenses from news organizations that report negative news stories about the Iran war. And so my question for you is, when we hear, Hegseth is such a clown, but when we hear him say stuff like this, how seriously do you take it?
I take that part very seriously. I mean, you have to take him seriously on some level across the board. I mean, he is the Secretary of Defense and he is running the Pentagon and basically the civilian in charge of the war, right under Donald Trump. So you have to take him seriously, even though it's shocking, the stuff he says. That stuff about Ellison and about threatening the press, I take that very seriously because it is happening. I mean, if you can see what's happened to CBS. It's obvious what's going on there and it's very dangerous. And Trump himself is doing this too, that like you mentioned, I mean, he's tweeting out stuff about all the success he's had and turning, half of intimidating and the media and, he's suing all these media companies and stuff. So it's very serious and particularly serious during war because this is, I mean, nothing could be more important, right? And the only thing that ever spares us from absolute total debacle is the fact that the free press is there to tell the American people, which then influence their leaders. At the moment, the war is very unpopular, and it has nothing to do with the press coverage. This just has to do with the fact that people understand that, there was no reason for this war. And Trump didn't bother to prepare anybody and basically just, went ahead and did it. So good luck. But I mean, I'm very, very concerned about this media stuff.
On a little bit lighter of a note, have you seen Colin Jost's portrayal of Pete Hegseth on Saturday Night Live?
It's so great.
I love that he plays him both like as an overgrown frat boy, but it's not cute. He's actually kind of scary and just an ugly, ugly person. It's a perfect portrayal. But what I want to ask you about is cabinet members. You don't usually see them portrayed, like people don't do impersonations of cabinet members on SNL. They're not usually famous enough. I mean, could people even tell you who Joe Biden's defense secretary was?
God, I don't think I can.
we looked it up. It's Lloyd Austin.
Lloyd Austin. Okay. All right. Now that you mention it, I have heard of that guy.
But like, what does it say about the Trump administration that multiple cabinet members, including Pete Hegseth, are like comical characters on Saturday Night Live?
I mean, it's amazing. It really is. I mean, and they all are comical characters in real life. I mean, they're like cartoons. That's how, I think the Jost impression is particularly great because of that exaggerated side of it. It isn't really that exaggerated. If anybody has ever watched those cabinet meetings, where they get up and do their full, North Korea Dear Leader act and talk about how great and the great glorious leader Donald Trump, who stopped the hurricanes even. I mean, he's that great. I mean, honestly, Kristi Noem, former DHS secretary, said that we want to thank you for stopping the hurricanes this year. So I mean, these people are larger than life. That's part of Trump's plan, I think. I mean, that's part of his political strategy.
He hires people that he thinks look good on TV.
Exactly. It's right out of central casting, and he wants them to behave like like him, essentially. I mean, Pam Bondi's a perfect example of that. She basically went in and just decided to just try and be Donald Trump in that congressional hearing. The problem is it doesn't really work for these people. I mean, I've never understood this, this worship of the macho, which is basically what they're all about. Donald Trump wears more makeup and hair stuff than RuPaul. I mean, my God.
Yeah.
And there's Hegseth, that same thing. I mean, you wrote about this. He's got the makeup studio and he's got all the, he's got all the cameras around all over the place. I mean, these people who are coming out of the, essentially the entertainment business, they are not macho. I mean, if you watched Pete Hegseth on the clips from him on Fox News, I mean, they're full of just silly hijinks, and he's not a manly man in the least. I mean, these people, it's always been a joke to me that they are the macho types. I mean, this is what MAGA defines as machismo. Give me a break.
Well, that's kind of a depressing note, but
oh gee. It is depressing. Sorry, but it is. We're in a real war with Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth at the helm. Oh my God.
Well, your writing on this has been some of the best stuff on the internet. And so I just want to invite you to hype yourself, tell people where they can find you on social media, read your writing.
Okay. Well, obviously I'm on Salon at least 3 times a week. I have my blog, which is easy to find. It's digbysblog.net. And I'm on Blue Sky as Digby56, and I do participate over there.
Thank you so much, Digby. It's been great having you.
Oh, anytime. I love it. Thanks.
And thank you all for watching. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. And stick around for Encore. We have a great song recommendation this week for you. Hey folks, coming to you from my house in Philadelphia and my home record collection. About half of this lives at Latchkey Records and the other half lives here. We swap it out depending on what we want to listen to. And my song recommendation for today is White Mouse Disco by the Modettes. This is, again, one of those records I just want to show off because I was so thrilled when I found it at a record store a bazillion years ago. The Modettes are a fun little band. They were formed in 1979 by Kate Corris. She's their guitarist. She was in the Slits. She was in the Raincoats. Both bands for just a minute. Both bands, I think, are probably a lot more famous than the Modettes. The Slits are obviously, well, to me, very famous. Probably not to most people, but in terms of an English punk band that was out there and really transitional between punk and post-punk, the Slits are right up there. And then the Raincoats, they are famous probably mostly because Kurt Cobain really loved them and pushed them really hard and gave them a second life. The Modettes are not nearly as esteemed. They're kind of a slight band. They're a post-punk band, got a little bit of a new wave vibe. And yet, it's the kind of music I really also love from that era, which is it's not as momentous or arty or important as the Slits or the Raincoats, but it is extremely fun. And White Mouse Disco is just like, it's a goofy, like, danceable track. I love to throw it on when I'm DJing. Even if people have never heard it before, they always enjoy it. And they've probably never heard it before. It's, again, a pretty obscure song. But it is just perfect. It's a perfect little pop tune, and it's worth checking out. And the Modettes are worth checking out. And one of the joys of record collecting is keeping track of these old bands that maybe didn't become legends, but are still worth listening to this day. The Modettes, White Mouse Disco. If you want more Standing Room Only episodes, please click the subscribe button below. Standing Room Only started as a newsletter, and it's free to read. Click the link to subscribe. I love tips. These political battles are playing out in your communities, your towns, your neighborhoods, your schools. If you have a story, please drop me a line or leave it in comments.